Rahman Rahim. Imam An-Nawawi now, in At-Tibyan fi Adabi Hamalat al-Qur'an, he goes now talking about when it is disliked to recite. Now some of this chapter we've taken previously in some of the previous lessons, but he says, know that reciting is good at all times, unrestrictedly, mutlaqan, unrestrictedly, all times. And he says, except if the legislation shows us and clarifies to us that it is not recommended at that moment or that instance or that situation to read the Qur'an. He mentions now the different areas where it's disliked. Number one, it is disliked to read the Qur'an in ruku', sujood, tashahhud, and other places in the prayer except for the qiyam, except for when standing. Number two, he says when sitting in the bathroom. Number three, at the time when one is tired and fatigued and unable to properly recite the Qur'an because he's too tired, he shouldn't recite the Qur'an in that kind of situation. Number four, at the time of the khutbah, when the khutbah is given, you should not be reciting the Qur'an. Number five, it is disliked for the one following the Imam to read more than Surah Fatiha in the audible prayer if he hears the Imam's recitation. And number six, it is not disliked to read the Qur'an during tawaf. So now we're going to go in detail what he mentioned here. Number one, as for reading, in al-ruku' and al-sujud, then it comes in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, ala inni nuhitu an aqra al-Qur'an raki'an aw sajidan. I was prohibited from reading the Qur'an in a state of ruku' and sujud. As for al-ruku', fa'adhimu fihi al-Rabb. As for ruku', then exonerate Allah in your ruku'. Amma sujud, then make dua Allah in it, فَكَمِنٌ أَنْ يُسْتَجَابَ لَكُمْ. It is a high likely case that your dua will be answered. Imam At-Tirmidhi and other scholars, they say, majority of the scholars, they say, it is disliked to read Qur'an in ruku' and sujud. The reason behind that is, Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah rahimahullah mentions that a ruku' and a sujud is where a slave is trying to lower himself. And lowering himself for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the Qur'an is the most noble and honorable speech. It is not befitting at that moment. Rather, when is the Qur'an recited? When you're standing in a salah. Al-Khattabi and other than mention that ruku' is for dhikr and sujud is for dua. So because it's specified to those two, the Qur'an is not to be recited in it. Qur'an is not to be recited in it. But some of the scholars say it's haram to recite the Qur'an in ruku' and sujud. From them, Ibn Hazm, what their proof was this hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. I was prohibited to read the Qur'an whether in prostration or in sujud. From them, As-San'ani, Ash-Shawkani, Imam Muqbil and Imam Albani as well, rahimahullah. They all took that stance. Although majority of the scholars say that this is a disliking and not a prohibition. As for using those du'as in the Qur'an, like رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ in your sujood and your ruku', then what is intended here is allowed. Because you're not intending to read the Qur'an. What is your intent behind it? To make dua. To make dua. If your intention is dua in that instance, then it's allowed because your intention is not to recite the Qur'an. Some of them, they say it's better to say before it, Allahumma, Rabbana, and like this to make sure it's a dua, but no problem. Number two, when sitting in the bathroom, we already mentioned that, it is not befitting for a person who is using the washroom or relieving himself to recite anything of the Qur'an, and we mentioned evidence for that before. Number three, at the time of fatigue. And when unable to recite properly, even in salah, if you're in salah, the Prophet said, whoever is na'isun, whoever is fatigued and tired, and he's tired, then let him فَلْيَرْكُدْ حَتَّى يَذْهَبْ عَنْهُ النَّوْمِ. Let him lay down until the sleep leaves him. Why is the benefit of that? Why should he lay down until the sleep leaves him? Anyone know the ending of the hadith? فَلَعَلَّهُ يَسْتَغْفِرُ فَيَسُبُّ نَفْسَهُ. Because he is tired, he might be thinking he's doing istighfar, but he's really cursing himself. Similarly, the Prophet said another hadith in Sahih Muslim, that whoever the Qur'an becomes difficult for him to recite and read, and it becomes to that where it's very hard for him to put the words together like that, he shouldn't be reading the Qur'an. What is he to do instead? Lay down and sleep. And get his sleep, and then when he wakes up, then let him read the Qur'an. The next one is at the time of khutbah. What should a person be doing at the time of the khutbah? Reading Qur'an, playing with his phone, talking to his friend. You should be doing what? listening to the Imam. Listen to the Khatib. إذا قلت لصاحبك والإمام يخطب اسكت والإمام يخطب فقد لغوته. If you say to your brother, be quiet while the Imam is giving the khutbah, you have lost your words of your khutbah, of your Jum'ah. You have lost your words of it and you have done idle speech. Similarly, the Qur'an, the scholars say if a Khatib is given a khutbah, you should not be reading the Qur'an. You should be paying attentively to what the Khatib is speaking about. Now, is it allowed to talk to the Khatib or the Khatib to talk to someone in the stands? Or is someone in the masjid listening? Yes. Ya fulan, asallayta raka'atain, did you pray 2 rak'ahs? He said, no, kum fasalli raka'atain, stand up and pray. If the Imam talks, you can talk back to him. Can you also, if something is of need, can you go to the Khatib and say something to him? Ya Rasulullah, halakatil amwal. Ya Rasulullah, the money has become lost, and there's drought and there's this and that. Udullah an yughithana. Make dua to us, for Allah to us, to give us rain. If there's a hajah, a need, you can discuss with the Imam. But when there's no hajah, a need, you shouldn't be doing anything except for listening to the Khatib. Except for listening to the Khatib. Number 6, he mentions, it is not disliked to read the Qur'an during tawaf. And that is because there's no clear evidence to show that it is disliked to read the Qur'an during tawaf, even though some of the scholars held that stance, but there's no evidence for that. There's no clear evidence to say that it is disliked to read Qur'an during tawaf. Then he mentions 2 innovations that occur from the people. Number 1, some people, they read Surah Al-An'am completely in the last rak'ah on the 4th night during Taraweeh, believing that it is recommended. So they take the whole Surah Al-An'am in the last rak'ah on the 4th night of Taraweeh and they finish it. This is an innovation, a bid'ah. Why is that? Why they do that? Because they say it comes from the Prophet ﷺ, a hadith, that Surah Al-An'am was revealed all at once. So make sure you read it all at once, and it was accompanied by 70,000 angels. This narration is not authentic to the Prophet ﷺ, number 1. Number 2, Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah, he says, is innovation, and it also opposes the sunnah of the Prophet in many ways. Number 1, when is it to be recited more, in the first rak'ah or the second rak'ah? The first one should be longer than the second one. In this case, you made the first one shorter than the second one. Another way he says oppose the sunnah, in Taraweeh, do you start with a long first or short first? You start with the longer portion first, and then the end, you finish with the shorter. Or you try to make it like that. He said this also opposes the sunnah of the Prophet in that aspect as well. Number 3, he said, Man ahdatha fi amrina hadha ma laysa minhu fawarad. Whoever innovates in this matter that was not from him is rejected. Did the Sahaba do it? Did the Prophet do it? Did the Tabi'un do it? Did the Salaf do it? No. If it was that they did it, لو كان خيرا ما سبقونا إليه. If it was good, they would have done it first. They didn't do it. So then us doing is innovation. Number 2. Now this is obviously if someone is doing taharri. He's purposely doing this. Let's say someone started leading salah, and he started with Surah Al-An'am, and he was so into it that he finished the whole surah. Can we say the innovation? He didn't intend it. He was غير قاصد. He didn't intend it. He was into it in the recitation and khushu', and he finished the whole Surah Al-An'am. No problem with that, if he did that. Number 2, another innovation he says that occurs on some people is in Salatul Fajr and Jum'ah. What is recommended to read in Salatul Fajr and Yawm al-Jum'ah? What is the recommendation? Surah Sajda, just any Sajda, or Surah Sajda, Alif Lam Mim Sajda. Alif Lam Mim Sajda. And in the second rak'ah, Hal Ata al-Insan, Surah Al-Insan. Some people, they believe that the Prophet ﷺ, when he mentioned this, he was referring to any sajda. So they said any sajda you recite in Surah Salat al-Fajr counts. They called it Sajdatul Jum'ah, the sajda for Yawm al-Jum'ah. Ibn Qayyim, he mentions this is not correct. He says rather the Prophet specified 2 surahs, and these 2 surahs should be recited to do at-taharri, to specifically say I can recite example Surah al-Najm or this surah, and that's because the sajda in Jum'ah, he said this is innovation. It's not from the way of the Prophet ﷺ. Now, is there wisdom why the Prophet used to recite these 2 surahs? You know wisdom why the Prophet specifically chose these 2 surahs on Yawm al-Jum'ah? Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah mentions there's a wisdom behind it. What happened on Jum'ah? When was Adam created? On Jum'ah. When is Al-Hashr? On Jum'ah. So these 2 surahs, it teaches you, it talks about that which occurred before your creation and that which will occur after your creation. So this is a reminder for you on Yawm al-Jum'ah to understand on this day these things occurred and will occur. That these things occurred and will occur. This is the same as Shaykh al-Islam, relayed by his student Ibn Qayyim in Zad al-Ma'ad. Then he says here, he says if he is reciting and he passes wind, during his recitation he should stop until all of his wind has passed and then continue. If he yawns, he should stop reciting until he finishes yawning and then he finishes recitation. Then he says, if he reads وَقَالَتِ الْيَهُودُ عُزَيْرٌ ibn Allah, that the Jews they say Uzair is the son of Allah. وَقَالَتِ الْيَهُودُ يَدُ اللَّهِ مَغْلُولَةٌ, and the Jews they say the hands of Allah are tied up. وَقَالُوا اتَّخَذَ اللَّهُ وَلَدًا, or he reads that they say Allah has a son. He says similar to these verses you should lower your voice. You find online some of these Qur'an, they practice this. And a person who puts this video up or this recitation says, look, he followed the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, he lowered his voice at this instance. This is not the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. This is a statement of Ibrahim al-Nakha'i, who is who? From the students of the students of Ibn Abbas, Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anh. It's a statement of one of the Salaf that he said this. But it's not the same with the Prophet ﷺ. So there's no evidence to say that at these instances you lower your voice during recitation. There's no clear evidence for that. And then he says, if he recites anytime when the Prophet is mentioned, Inna Allah malaikatu yusalluna ala nabi, Ya ayyuhan nabi yujahidul kuffar. Anytime when you mention Ya ayyuhan nabi or an nabi, you say Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam during your recitation. Some of the Salaf, they did hold this stance. But there's no evidence from the Sahaba and the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba and the Prophet that they did this. So there's not sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ when you reach a time in the recitation, whether inside or outside the prayer, that you stop recitation, you say Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Where did they get that from? The generality of this evidence is مَنْ ذَكِرْتُ عِنْدَ فَلَمْ يُصَلِّ عَلَيْهِ, that the Bakhil, the Imais ones, the one who I mentioned amongst them, he doesn't send salah upon him, and other narrations that come with that meaning. Then he says, if a person reads أَلَيْسَ اللَّهُ بِأَحْكَمِ الْحَاكِمِينَ and أَلَيْسَ اللَّهُ بِقَادِرٍ عَلَىٰ أَنْ يُحْيِيَ الْمَوْتَى, that he says بَلَى وَأَنَا عَلَىٰ ذَلِكَ مِنَ الشَّاهِدِينَ. These two as well is not authentic to the Prophet ﷺ. Although the second one regarding Surah Al-Qiyamah, Shaykh Al-Albani says is more authentic than the first one in Surah Teen. Also he says if he reads فَبِأَيِّ حَدِيثٍ بَعْدَهُ يُؤْمِنُونَ, you say آمَنْتُ بِاللَّهِ. And if you read سَبِّحِ اسْمَ رَبِّكَ الْأَعْلَى, you do tasbih. And other than that, he says these are recommended for inside and outside the prayer. We already took that. It's recommended in Qiyamul Layl. It's recommended in Qiyamul Layl when, if you go by a verse of mercy, you ask Allah for mercy. A verse of punishment, you ask Allah for refuge from it. And something like that comes in Qiyamul Layl, you do so, no problem. But to do it in Fard and like that, then it is not recommended. As the scholars mentioned, we clarified that before. And majority of these athar and these narrations that come with this meaning, they're either weak, number one, they're not authentic to the Prophet ﷺ, or they're all either mawquf. What does mawquf mean? Who is a statement mawquf? Who says mawquf? Statement of whom? A sahabi. A sahabi. And even to the sahabi, a lot of them are weak to them. Radiallahu anhum. So with that, we'll stop and continue next week. So there's no time. And Brother Faisal's class needs time. We'll stop with this. Subhanak wa bihamdik, la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.